Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my winter TBR. So I'm definitely a mood reader, so I haven't done a proper TBR, like monthly TBR, in a long time just because I never stick to it. So this is a bit of a departure for me, but I have decided to set a goal of books that I really want to get to in the next few months before spring comes. So it's like a seasonal TBR. I've seen these done before and I've really enjoyed watching them, and I think this will be a lot easier for me because it's like a list of books that I can pick from. But like I'm not set on only reading these in the month, if that makes any sense. I can still like go into a different direction if I want to, and which I probably will. But basically I've got a huge stack of books here that are on my TBR that I have desperately been wanting to get to lately. A lot of them are YA fantasy sequels and or like finales in series that I desperately need to finish. Quite a few are adult fantasy because I have a very large adult fantasy TBR and not very many that I've actually read on my shelves, so I really want to make that ratio get a little bit smaller. And then I've got one little historical fiction on this shelf that I've been wanting to read it for so long, so I really want to get to it soon. But yeah, without further ado, let me just get on to the books that I want to read this season. Okay, so the first book on this stack is one historical fiction, and that is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. So I heard about this book from Jean over at Jean's Thoughts, and I will tag her down below. But this book tells the story of the Trojan War from the point of view of Briseis, who is the captured queen that is held in the Greek war camps during the war as a present for Achilles. I love this because I have become a huge fan of ancient Greek retellings or ancient Greek stories and being retold from the point of view of some of the women in the stories, because as any of you know who have studied Greek mythology, it is a very male-dominated space, so hearing from these characters that have just kind of been brushed under the rug and have just kind of been held up as just like people who were there and didn't have a voice is something that I'm very excited about. I've heard this being compared to The Likes of Circe by Madeline Miller, which is one of my favorite books of all time. It's kind of short, but I don't mind, and I am just so excited to read this. And also this cover is just freaking gorgeous. Next up, I'm going to go into my stack of sequels that I really want to get to, starting from the ones I've had the oldest going to the newest ones on my shelf. So the first one is Five Dark Fates by Kendar Blake. This is the fourth and final book in the Three Dark Crowns series. I started reading this series last January. No, either last January or the January before last, and I read the first three like it's quick succession, one after the other in a couple days. Really love this series, and then I had to wait for the last one. That's typically what happens for this, is that I have to wait, and then once it comes out I just never pick it up. So this series is a YA fantasy series about a world in which three queens are born on this island, each one having a different type of power or ability, one being elemental, one being a poisoner, and one being a kind of like a familiar, is like a more naturalist, and typically has an animal familiar with them. They're each taken to a different corner of the island and raised to become the best that they can be in their powers, and then when they're 16, they are brought together to a fight to the death, and whoever wins becomes queen. This series is insane and I really love it. My favorite of the sisters is Arsinoe, and I really love the dynamic between these sisters. It's really interesting. A world in which they're born to destroy their siblings, and they have never really known their siblings since they were about 6 years old. That's when they're taken to different parts of the world, and so them having to reconcile between their fond memories of their siblings with what they're forced to do in this world is super interesting, and I'm just very excited to finish off this book. And next up is Girls of Storm and Shadow by Natasha Nan. This is the second book in the Girls of Paper and Fire series. This series follows Leia, who is chosen to be a paper girl for the Emperor in her world. This world is made up of a bunch of magical different creatures that are kind of like demons. There are some beings that are human, some beings that are half human, half demon, and then full demon beings. The demon beings are the ones that control this world. And the less demon blood, less magic in your system, the poorer you are typically. Every year there are 8 girls chosen to be paper girls for the Demon King. And these girls are brought to the castle, and their life's duties to fulfill the wishes of the Demon King. Except this year they've chosen a ninth favorite girl, and that is Lay. And Lay is doing everything in her power to escape this horrible fate. This is the second book in the series, and I've had it for a very long time. I love Lay so much. I love one of the other characters, Ren, so much. And I am desperate to finish this off. This book does have a romance between two women, which I find incredible, and it really breaks the boundaries of the story, and I just really love this series, and I really want to give it a go. Next up, I've had this one for a while, and this is Finale by Stephanie Garber, the last book in the Caraval series. I love the Caraval series. I still don't know why I haven't finished this book yet, but this series tells the story of two sisters, one who is kind of obsessed with this magical Roman carnival called Caraval, and one who's kind of really not interested. The one that's really interested in the magic finds out one day that her sister has actually been taken and has become part of the game, and so she has to insert herself into this world that she doesn't belong in, that she really doesn't want to be a part of, and she has to try and win the game in order to free her sister. The game is full of illusions and magic, and you never know what's real and what's not. You have to figure out between what's part of the game, what's not part of the game, what is actually a danger to you, what is actually not a danger to you. And it's just a really atmospheric book. It is gorgeously written, and I absolutely adore it, so I really need to finish off this series, and I'm very excited. Next up is probably my most anticipated sequel of last year, which I am very excited and also very apprehensive to read. And this is Queen of Volts by Amanda Foody. This is the third book in the Shadow Game series, starting with Ace of Shades, and I'm scared. Ace of Shades follows two main characters, Anne and Levi. Anne is a very proper girl. She goes to a finishing school just outside of New Rains, and Levi is a young con man living inside New Rains. New Rains is the city of sin, and it is a world in which once you enter, you are most likely to be corrupted in some way, shape, or form. And ends up having to travel to New Rains to find her missing mother. It is the only clue that she has to where her mother has gone, is to find Levi and meet up with him and work with him in order to save her mother. The magic system in this world is incredible. I really love it. It's kind of like a familial magic, a generational magic. Certain families have certain magical abilities, and like if they know your last name, they know what kind of power you have, basically. Some powers are more headstrong and more, I don't know, they find themselves in people a lot more often. They're like less recessive. Some are more recessive and don't show up as easily. I love this book series so much, and I'm just so scared after the finale of King of Fools to find out what's going to happen, and I'm not ready, and eventually I will finish this series and probably cry a lot. And last up for the sequels that I'm desperate to read are We Free the Stars by Hafsa Faisal. This one just came in the mail a little while ago. It is a pre-order. This is the second book in the We Hunt the Flame duology, or the what's it called? Sands of Iowa duology. The first book, We Hunt the Flame, follows two main characters. One is Zafira, who is the huntress, and one is Nasir, who is the crown prince of this world. Zafira is a hunter. She is the only one who dares to enter this one magical forest in her town in order to hunt game and keep her family and her community safe and alive and fed. And Nasir is the crown prince, but also the main tasked assassin for the king of Iowa. And one day, Zafira is outed as the huntress. She is tasked by the king to go into this magical forest that is a huge danger and most people stay away from, but she is very familiar with, in order to find an ancient relic. What she doesn't know is that Nasir has also been sent in to get the relic from Zafira and then kill her. The dynamic between the two main characters is just incredible in this series, and the magic system is so amazing. Like, it is so atmospheric, it is so visual. It is just an incredible series to read, and I finished it in like a day, so I'm very excited to see what happens in the sequel, and I absolutely can't wait. It's probably going to be my next read, if I'm being honest. Okay, and now is my pile of adult fantasy that I'm excited to get to, that I've had on my shelves for a while now, and I'm very excited to dive into the genre a bit more. So first up is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. So this one I don't know a ton about, to be perfectly honest. I know that this follows one character named Fitz, who is trained as an assassin and uses a kind of magic called the Farseer magic. And he's a very unlikely hero and is probably going to be tasked with saving this kingdom at one point. Again, I don't know a whole lot about it. I've heard Ashley talking about it all the time over at A Frolic Through Fiction, so I will leave her linked below as well. But I've heard it's a really great adult fantasy to get into to start off with, so I'm excited to give it a go. Tyler brought me breakfast. I love him. Anyway, the next book that I'm really excited to get into is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. The only other J. Kristoff book I've read is Illuminae, which is another series that I need to finish. And that was written by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This one is just by J. Kristoff. This was his first series, I believe. And it is super dark, it is super twisted, and it deals with Mia, who is a girl who was trained to be an assassin from a very young age. She trained to be an assassin of her own volition because she wanted to get revenge on the people who destroyed her world, and I've heard this series is incredible. It's super dark, it's super like gory, it's super twisted, so I am very looking forward to this. It's gonna be a great winter read, and I'm just very excited. Next up is a book that I've already started reading, actually. I started reading this back in April when lockdown first started, or was really getting into lockdown. But I just struggled to get through the first 100 pages, which is something I've heard of before, so I really want to give it a second try. And that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a series in which the environment and the actual world around people is trying to kill humanity to save itself, basically. So it's got a lot of elemental magic. I just find the premise super interesting. That's all I really know about it. And I've heard that the first 100 pages is difficult to get through, but once you do, the book becomes really worth it. At the time, again, I wasn't reading a whole lot, so starting something that daunting kind of was a bad choice for me, but I am excited to give it a shot again this season. This book I've had on my shelf for an embarrassingly long time, and it is a standalone, so I don't know why I haven't finished it, but that is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I've talked about this book on my channel quite a bit. But it is a standalone adult fantasy retelling of Rumpelstiltskin. All I really know is that it is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, which is one of my favorite fairy tales of all time, and it involves a icy fae queen. It is very icy, it is very wintry, it is very appropriate for this season, and something I've really been wanting to read but haven't, and I need to bite the bullet and finally get it done. I had her other book Uprooted on my shelf for a very long time, and once I read it, I just devoured it. I absolutely adored it. And I know what's going to happen again with this one, so I just need to do it. I have her other book, her newest book, A Deadly Education, on my shelf as well that I really want to read, which is more about it's brand new and it's more about a magical academy, which is going to be awesome. But I'm desperate to read this very soon, and I will. I'm telling myself I will. This book I've also already started and put down again because I just wasn't in the mood to read. And it's one that my one friend Kay has been telling me to read for a very long time, and that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So this is a adult fantasy series that follows Rin as she studies and studies and studies for a test to become a part of her kingdom's military world and to go to a specific prestigious military academy. She's the only peasant girl from this town to have ever gotten accepted to the highest caliber of these schools. The rest of the series is very much a fantasy retelling of the Second Sino-Japanese War, which as a student of history and a student of Asian history, I'm very excited to see. As I started reading it, I already could spot some references to ancient Chinese history, and it just made me so happy. And I'm just very excited to keep going with it. Again, it's not that intimidating. I don't know why I'm so hesitant to read it. I just wasn't in the proper mood to be reading it when I started it. So I'm excited to finish it and then continue with the series. Next up is a book that I was very excited about when I bought and then never picked it up, so I don't know what's wrong with me, but it is Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters, who is actually a Canadian author, which is really great. This book tells the story of a world in which dragons are real. In this world, I believe the way it goes is that 1 in every 100 men, I believe, are able to call upon the power of a dragon and turn into a dragon. and 1 in every 2,000 women is given the ability to call these dragons down and wield them as weapons, I believe. Something to do with that. But it's blurbed as being like Game of Thrones meets Gladiator. So, and it says on the back, a world caught in an eternal war, one young man will become his people's only hope for survival. I love it. It's got dragons. It's compared to Gladiator. And it's a Canadian author. It's a massive adult fantasy, and I'm ready for it. I need to get to it very soon because the sequel is either coming out or has just come out. Next up is more of an adult, like paranormal almost, rather than fantasy, I think. I'm not positive, but it is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I've had this on my shelf since it came out in 2019, and it is something that I'm really desperate to read. I probably won't read it until closer to the end of the season, but it is like I've heard it described as being like dark academia and as being a like ghostly story, super dark, super twisted. It's deals with kind of like secret societies and clubs at big Ivy League schools like Yale. And it follows one character who has been kind of invited into this club because she can see ghosts. And I don't know, that sounds really great and really interesting. Again, I started it and I got like, how did I get into it? My bookmark's still here. I got into like 20 pages in, so barely started it, but I'm excited to finally read it, and I know I'm gonna love it, so I just need to, again, bite the bullet and read it. And the last book is one that I've had on my shelf for much too long. It is a chonker. I finally need to, again, just sit down and do it and finally read it because I know I'm gonna love it. I've heard amazing things about it. I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but I need to like set aside some time to dedicate to it. And that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I've had this on my shelf for much too long. And I also have no idea what it's about. I know it's got 3 kingdoms, I believe. One of them has dragons, and it's got female-female romance, which is I'm always here for. And it's a huge epic style fantasy that is like rivals many other epic fantasies, and it's written by a woman, and I'm just so ready to read it. It's got dragons again. I love dragons. Yeah, I'm desperate to read it. Her other series, The Bone Season, is more of like a dystopia, I believe, which I also want to read. And this is her first foray into true high fantasy. And I'm ready for it. I am ready for it. This is going to be a massive undertaking, but I am ready. I just read Crescent City, which is longer than this, so I really need to get to this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you see any books on your winter TBR that I just mentioned here, or have read any of the books that I've mentioned here, please let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up because it really helps support my channel. And if you're new here, please subscribe because I put out new bookish and organization videos every week. I hope you guys have a lovely day.